We're going to get right into the budget address this morning, and for those that came last year, it'll be a little bit different. We're not going to be focused on so many projects and new ideas as we are really talking about the upcoming fiscal year budget. But before we do that, we have a variety of updates we want to provide for you in regards to different metrics and goals that this community has set over the past few years. And we refer to these as our 4-year goals in the City of Hopkinsville, but they've really been set in partnership with a variety of stakeholders throughout the community, including our Economic Development Council, our school system, and our Chamber of Commerce, and county government. And I hope that you guys appreciate the strong working relationship that is had between city government, county government, our Economic Development Council, our Chamber of Commerce, and other communities throughout the region. We should not take that for granted. It's exceptional to have those types of working relationships so that we're working as a region toward a better tomorrow. And good evidence of that is the news that came out late yesterday that the Edward T. Breathitt Parkway, what we refer to as the Pennyroyal Parkway, will be designated as Interstate 169 as a result of some activity yesterday in the U.S. Congress, and that was after years of advocacy between many stakeholder groups. And Representative Thomas, we certainly appreciate the work that you did this past legislative session, ensuring that that was a state priority. So it's that type of working together, that type of collaboration that leads to great success and a bold vision for tomorrow. So let's not take that for granted, and I want to say thank you publicly to our county government, Judge Tribble. We work very closely as we talk about our budgets, as well as to our economic development teams over the Chamber of Commerce and the Economic Development Council and the Convention and Visitors Bureau. I see Cheryl Cook out there. We're working hard to make sure we have a growing community. But as you see on the screen, we had set some goals back in 2014, looking to 4 years ahead. And I'll take each one of them, and I won't spend a lot of time on these goals. You can read them for yourself. But when you look at population, we will acknowledge that it shows a slight drop in population over the last couple of years. That's based on census estimates. And those estimates, we continue to argue, are slightly flawed in the way they count our military personnel at Fort Campbell and those who live in our community. And so even though it shows a slight drop, we really try to compare ourselves to the 2010 numbers, which if we look back to 2010, the census had us at 32,208. So we have seen a slight increase in population since 2010, but certainly we need to see more. The reason the population is important to us is it helps to demonstrate to retailers and restaurants in particular the type of community that we have and whether or not it's growing. And that's a really important aspect if you're looking to invest in a business in Hopkinsville and Christian County. Are you investing in a growing community? And so the 2016 estimate has us at 32,483, and we would love to see our 4-year goal reaching around 35,000 people. And we have another goal here shortly that we'll talk about that really drives us to that reality. And so we're clearly not there yet, but we're investing in many ways to help us get there. And hopefully over the next couple of years, we'll see that number continue to pick up. But the real number to be paying attention to is the 2020 census. That's when we'll get a final number. It's the decennial census, and that will tell us really where we are from a population perspective. I can acknowledge that from a housing market perspective, Mr. Smiley, I see you here, and having long-time experience as a realtor, that the housing market is very active right now, according to the real estate agents I've spoken to at least. Our average days on the market is down, which that's a good sign. That means it takes less time to sell a home. That's indicative of demand. And so if we see increased demand for housing, generally speaking, you'll see an increase in population. And so we certainly hope to see that. We also set a 4-year goal on our payroll of $1 billion. And as of 2016, calendar year 2016, we're at roughly $817,321,692. And so we're certainly making progress towards that goal of a $1 billion community, and we hope to see us achieve that goal by the year 2018. If not then shortly thereafter. Again, that's important because it indicates a growing community, a growing economy, more people with more payroll able to shop and do business in our community, which is really the most critical aspect of having a business-friendly community. Tax rate is important, population is important, but income is the most important aspect as it indicates more and more people are able to do business here in Christian County and in Hopkinsville. Tourism continues to be a strength. We've stayed pretty constant at 14th in the state, Cheryl. I know we're working hard to see that number continue to increase. Our goal is to be top 10 county in the state of Kentucky, and right now we're number 14 with a very sizable impact of $142,660,226 spent on tourism-related activities in 2016. That's not using a multiplier effect. That's the raw dollars that were spent in 2016 in tourism-related industries. And as you bring people into your community for tourism and they spend their money, it creates economy. And that's really important to us as we think about the future. We do have good news with our unemployment rate. It is down. In 2014, we were at 6.6%. It's now 5.4%. Our goal was 5.5%. and so we're below goal. We'd like to see that number maintained below goal. Of course, it can change, and so if the economy were to turn in a negative fashion, it could jump back up, and it is a monthly number that's reported, so this is the most recent number that we have at 5.4%, again below the 4-year goal of 5.5%. Really, we'd like to see it get below 5%, but there is a point to where you have to have a healthy unemployment number. If you get too low, you really have a workforce shortage, and it's hard for you to attract new business. And so to some degree, once you get below 4%, you start to get, according to economists, in almost an unhealthy position when it comes to unemployment. So 5.4% is certainly not a bad number, but we'd like to see that number continue to drop a little lower. Our per capita income number has continued to improve to the estimate of $20,834 in 2016 with a 4-year goal of $24,000. Now, that number, the quicker we can improve it, the better. And the way that we improve it is continued recruitment of good, high-paying jobs. And I do need to say this. Sometimes I see on social media and through the rumor channels that Hopkinsville doesn't want good-paying jobs. Well, I can only speak on behalf of our city council, and I want to thank those who are here this morning and myself. We do want good-paying jobs, and we're happy to recruit them and incentivize them and help to create them to the best of our ability. And for anyone to say anything different, I think they've just been living in the past too long and not necessarily paying attention to what we're doing in the present. But certainly, we want good-paying jobs that help increase that per capita income number. Like population, that per capita income number is critical as you think about recruiting new businesses, recruiting new retail, and recruiting new restaurants. In fact, when a new retailer or a new restaurant looks in a community, there are 3 important factors they're looking at. They look at your population trend, they look at your per capita income trend, and they look at your vehicle count. And is that number, is the traffic count growing year over year, or is it diminishing year over year? So if you see those trends going in the right direction, that gives you the greater likelihood that you can land those types of businesses that we all want. And I know many people often say they want places like Cracker Barrel or Target or Kohl's or any number of large name brand retailers, but we also want the mom and pop shops that open up in our community, and they're more likely to open up when they see a growing community as well. So that's why we track per capita income. On the next slide, we look at construction numbers, and this helps us to understand what's happening in our construction industry because it relates to, are we going to be able to grow our population base? The fact of the matter is, if we're not putting new residential units on the market, then it's almost impossible for us to grow our population unless we're growing our per household size, and that doesn't usually happen in big numbers. So thankfully in 2016 we saw a better year than we saw in 2014. We had 103 total units that were built in 2016, 34 single family. That's not enough. That's just simply not enough. It's more than in 2014, but it's not enough. In fact, we have a 4-year goal of 125 single-family units being built, and obviously we're going to have to see a sizable increase in that number, but at least we're moving in the right direction. Now, our multifamily, we saw 45 multifamily units last year that were constructed in Hopkinsville and Christian County. This is in Hopkinsville, but in Hopkinsville, we saw 45 total multifamily units. That includes duplexes, quadplexes, apartment complexes, anything that's a multifamily unit. We saw 45 of those. Our 4-year goal is 50, and so we're much closer to that goal, and we're certainly excited to see those types of living opportunities for new residents. And then we saw 24 commercial constructions last year. That's a really good sign. If you look at the 4-year goal, we were hoping for 15, and so we surpassed that goal last year at least, largely driven by the Thompson Thrift Project that I'll be speaking about here very shortly. Again, though, 103 total units in 2016. Our 4-year goal is 190 units, so we have some progress to make. And I would encourage you, if you know builders and developers, I would encourage you to encourage them. The average days on the market has gone down. The housing prices are going up, and those are directly related. If it takes less time to sell a home, you get more value for that home. We're seeing it improving in our public school system, as you see right here below this construction numbers. We're seeing improvements in our quality of life. And so we would certainly argue that now is the time to be investing in residential units in Hopkinsville and Christian County because so many of the variables that new residents may be looking for are going in the right direction. You know, military families and millennials, it's important to them that you have quality of life amenities, that you have excellent schools, that you have excellent nonprofit agencies, that you have a thriving downtown. And I think you guys will all agree the momentum is on our side, but we need our construction to follow suit, and we need more single-family units in particular. The perception of community safety continues to be an area that we focus on. And as you can see, in 2014, we were ranked 9th out of 17 overall. This year, we're 9th out of 18, adding an additional city that we compared ourselves to. So the number 9 didn't change, but our relative position is slightly better. we want to be in the lower 25 percentile. So that means we want to be really about 5th overall, 4th to 5th overall instead of 9th overall. But I do want to focus on this for just a minute. Oftentimes you'll hear in the public that people believe that we're not as safe as we need to be. And certainly any crime is too much crime. But when you really compare us to our peer cities like Paducah and Owensboro and Bowling Green and some other areas, we compare very favorably. And our crime rate is not nearly as bad as some people perceive it to be. Does that mean that we don't have our challenges and our issues? Absolutely not. That's why Hopkinsville Police Department and other agencies work so hard every single day to tackle this issue. But we are 9th overall, so that puts us middle in the pack for the peer cities that we compared ourselves to. Next, you look at the graduation rate, and that is a number that's been moving quickly in the right direction. In fact, in our baseline in 2014, our graduation rate was 81.3%. It's now 92.2% with the 4-year goal of 95%. That is really something worth applauding and recognizing that the Christian County Public Schools continue to make great strides, not only with their graduation rate, but also with other key indicators, such as the recent announcement that Hopkinsville High School is ranked a top 30 public high school in the state of Kentucky. That's not the mayor's report. That wasn't the school system's report. That was U.S. News and World Report, a well-known international brand that focuses on these types of reports throughout the country and throughout the world. And here we are ranked a top 30 public high school at Hopkinsville High School. Now, to give you a point of comparison, if you go back about 12 years ago, that wasn't the case. In fact, Hopkinsville High School and Christian County High School were both ranked in the bottom 10 public high schools in the state of Kentucky in the year 2005. The bottom 10. And now we have one ranked in the top 30 public high schools in the state of Kentucky. And although I didn't see Christian County's numbers specifically, knowing their position relative to Hopkinsville, they're not that far behind. And so both of our public high schools are doing well. We certainly want them to do better, but I think we need to acknowledge the great work that's being done there. And again, think about population and what makes us attractive to others. Having an outstanding educational system, public and private, and higher education is absolutely critical. And so this is good information for us to share. Our ACT composite, we're at 18.3. We have a 4-year goal of 20. That's about the same as it was in 2014. Unfortunately, we'd like to see more progress on that number. I know both public high schools are working diligently to improve their ACT scores, offering a lot of activity, a lot of help, putting a lot of emphasis on it. I can acknowledge that Hopkinsville High School is not too far below that number 20. In fact, Nikki, I'm looking at you. What was that number again? They're at 20, that's right. So Hopkinsville High School is at 20. Christian County High School has a little more work to do. And I know Mr. Chris Bensel, the principal over there, along with his leadership team and teachers, are working hard each and every day to see their numbers continue to improve. So I have no doubt that it will happen. We just need to see it in the overall scores. That does not include either of our two private schools. That is just our public school numbers. So I suspect if you added in Heritage Christian to that number and University Heights to that number, it would lift the average somewhat. I don't know the exact number that it would lift it because it's not a very big pool of ACT takers that are taking it from those two schools, but I suspect that it would lift those averages. Now, why is that important? Because employers, they don't really care if you graduate from a public or private high school. They care that you graduate from a good school and that you're capable of doing the job that they need you to do. So oftentimes we get caught up in the public versus private debate, but our workforce needs could care less about that. So we need to have good schools, whether they be public or private, and certainly support all of them because we need all of the young people that graduate from those schools to be ready to contribute to our society. So again, ACT composite continuing to make some progress, but we need to see better progress being made over the next couple years. By the way, if you have any questions along the way, feel free to ask this. I meant to say that earlier. I noticed that none of you wanted to sit in the front rows. Is this a splash zone, I suppose? I'm trying not to spit too much, but perhaps it's known as the splash zone, Margaret. But either way, feel free if you have any questions, media friends and others along the way. I'll be happy to answer them as best I can. The next couple slides, we're going to talk about some of the expansions that have been announced this past year in our community, including the U.S. smokeless expansion, which was a $40 million investment and also added several employees to the Altria U.S. smokeless family. If you've not seen their new facility out at South Park, it is an impressive facility. Several of us had the chance to go out there just a couple months ago as they did the grand opening, and what an outstanding facility that is. And you need to note that they had choices about where they were going to put that facility. They had many choices, and they chose Hopkinsville and Christian County from their reasons, they said, because of the workforce, the quality workforce, because of the tax structure, and because they like it here. And so that's really important to understand. They could have chosen anywhere else, and they chose to expand and invest here to the tune of $40 million worth of investment. We also announced Reich and Elastomers and their $22 million expansion last year, T-Gas with a $7.5 million facility upgrade and training, and Freudenberg with a $2 million investment that helped create an additional line, so the additional production line. So these are significant investments being made by existing industry right here in our community. Now, they wouldn't do that if they didn't feel confident about their ability to produce right here in our community, and they wouldn't do it if they didn't feel confident about our workforce in this community. So we're certainly excited about those investments and those expansions, all of them certainly with the capital investments being made, several of them with new jobs that were created as well. The next slide, we talk about some of our development incentives, and I know everybody here is very excited about the new Thompson Thrift Hopkinsville Town Center. And if you've been out there lately, you'll see that it's coming along very, very quickly. I think its estimated timeline of completion is the September time frame, has been reported by friends in the media. I would love to see them open by the weekend of August the 18th. It doesn't look like that's going to happen. And so we'll just be really close to seeing them get open at that point. I know that my daughter and my wife and several of you are probably excited about the Hobby Lobby and the Panera Bread and the TJ Maxx and the Ulta and the Burke's and the Rue 21 and all the other stores that are going to be coming there. My son is very particularly excited about the PetSmart because he's more of an animal lover than most of us are, I think, but he's certainly excited about that. But these were encouraged by incentives. Much like those industry expansions were encouraged through incentives, so were these encouraged through incentives. And I think it's important for the community to know that Hopkinsville remains aggressive with the types of incentives we will put in place to help our community grow. We've long offered the industrial incentives to land new industrial opportunities and to expand industrial centers here in the community, and we'll continue to offer those. And in fact, we're anxious to offer some new incentives to the next industry that wants to land here. We don't have one to announce today. I wish we did. But we are certainly anxious to allow those to happen because we like to create jobs. And as I said earlier, we like to create good-paying jobs when we have that opportunity. But over the past few years, we've gotten much more aggressive in our retail incentives. And that's because we've had a city council that has listened to the public and understands we need more retail in this community. And so before I go any further, I would like to recognize Councilmember Grimes, Councilmember Bell, Councilmember Craig, and Councilmember Henson for being here. It's their leadership on our city council that helps us to be aggressive with incentives. I should also acknowledge that Councilmember Don Ahart, since his regrets that he couldn't be here this morning, he actually has an emergency dentist appointment. And so budgets often can be seen as painful, but I think the dentist is a little more painful yet. And so Councilmember Ahart, I'm sure, would have rather have been here. He sends his regrets. And then Councilmember Lynch, he doesn't have as painful of as an excuse. He's in Louisville with the Derby activity, so we don't feel sorry for Wendell. But we do have Bonnie here representing the Lynch family and, of course, the library and other interests I know. And then other council members I know have to work and have other obligations. Councilmember Parker I saw earlier, and he was working today, and I'm sure all the other council members who aren't here are working as well. But to the council members here, we do thank you for being here. And we thank you for your continued leadership with these types of retail incentives, much like the ones we use at Hopkinsville Town Center, as well as the ones that we authorized and approved at the Welcome Inn. If you remember the old Welcome Inn or the old Holiday Inn or the old Motor Host Lodge, I think it was called, it had several names throughout the course of time. This is what it looked like about a year and a half ago. And I received many, many calls, as did council members, about the state of that campus, about how it was a public safety issue. And it was. There were things going on, Deputy Chief Cease, in that facility that I don't think we care to have to admit, but it was certainly a public safety issue. It was a blight. It did not help attract people when they drove down Fort Campbell Boulevard. It was not something that we wanted people to see when they first drove down Fort Campbell Boulevard, but they did. And thankfully, we had a local developer that was interested in redeveloping that property, and the council approved an incentive to help the demolition of the Welcome Inn, which has now created this new facility called Campbell Station, which includes the Little Caesars, the Jersey Mike's, and Buffalo Wild Wings, which we all enjoy having new national name brand restaurants in our community, but I'd be remiss if I didn't also acknowledge how much we enjoy locally owned and locally flavored restaurants in our community too. But I'll tell you, I went to Buffalo Wild Wings last night. It was crowded, the service was awesome, and the food was exceptional. So these are the types of facilities. Not only were we getting rid of a blighted development, we now have a redeveloped area that is adding a lot of new traffic into our community. Of the people that were in the restaurant last night, I knew maybe a quarter of them. And many of them, as I looked at their license plates, were coming from neighboring counties. That is critical if we want to grow our community to give people more and more reasons to drive in from a neighboring county to eat, to shop, and to recreate. And this is another one of those great examples, and it was incentivized. We've also been asked to consider some other incentives, and we're looking at those, and so hopefully soon we'll see some good redevelopment of the Bradford Square Mall campus. Of course, you've already seen some of the work being done out there. If you haven't been out to the campus lately, I certainly encourage you to get out there. People's had its grand reopening yesterday. They've completely reoriented their inside shopping experience. It is a wonderful setup, and we still, of course, have Hibbett's and JCPenney's inside the facility along with Teletech. But I know the developer of that property is eagerly working towards a redevelopment plan that you can see on the screen there that will bring a lot of new opportunity into our community. So we are hopeful, we are optimistic, and I believe our council is prepared to be a great partner in that project moving forward, but we've still got some decisions to make with that particular project. But certainly, I believe we all agree that we want to see the mall campus thriving once again. I think that's one that we can all agree on. I will have to acknowledge that the redevelopment plan, it will no longer be the mall as we think of the mall. You will not be able to walk from store to store from the interior. It will be what we call a power center, much like the Hopkinsville Town Center is being built. It will be an outdoor-oriented and external entrance-oriented shopping center. And but more importantly, it will be a shopping center that has more retail opportunities and hopefully the kind of name brands that bring people in from the neighboring counties. Because again, if you want to grow your community and you want to grow your economy, you have to not only serve the needs of your current population, you have to give more opportunity for people to come from the surrounding region. And with our sales tax advantage in Kentucky, when we get these larger name stores like the TJ Maxx's and the Hobby Lobbies, we really do have a competitive advantage with our friends across the border. With our 6% sales tax versus 9.75% sales tax, it stands to reason that more and more people will come across the border to shop and spend their disposable income and then probably stop by a restaurant or maybe visit the water park or come to the museum, or maybe they'll catch a play that night at the Alhambra, or perhaps they'll go by the library for a special activity. I'm trying to see all the different agencies I see in here right now. I saw John Bruce come in. Maybe they'll even go to the Hoptown Hoppers game. I don't know, John. I don't really care which one they choose to do, just as long as they choose to do it when they come into our community. Now I want to brag real quickly. We've got a lot of folks who have worked hard on this particular, the next few initiatives, and this first one here I think is so exciting how successful it's been. And Ms. Nikki Durham, who serves as a staff person for our transit system internally, along with our partners at the Penny Royal Allied Community Services, deserve a lot of credit for this. But so does the Transportation Advisory Committee, the Public Transit Advisory Committee, chaired by Councilmember Henson and Councilmember McCarley. And then there's a large number of volunteers that serve on that committee. But several years ago, public transit was attempted in our community, and it didn't work at that point in time. And for years after that, we basically said, we'll never work here. It'll never work here. And because we tried once and it didn't succeed, many people were willing to give up. And thankfully, Mayor Kemp a few years ago, along with several other community leaders and the council support, decided to give this another shot. And would you believe that now we're up to 3 routes, 56 stops, that so far in fiscal year 2016-2017, we had 34,142 riders. In fact, year-to-date numbers are 82% higher than this time last year. 82% higher than this time last year. Since its inception, the transit system has provided over 272,000 miles worth of coverage in this community. And what's really exciting about it is how people are using it, why they are using it. And so I know Nikki gave a presentation yesterday to PEMA, I think it was, the Penny Royal Industrial Managers Association. And the number of people we are dropping off at Industrial Park and picking up Industrial Park, it's absolutely staggering in a good way. In a good way. I mean, we're talking not 1 or 2 people. We're not talking 10 to 20 people. We're in the hundreds that are being dropped off and picked up in our industrial park. And so when you think about the reasons for public transit, we certainly wanted to get people to medical appointments if they need it. We wanted to get them to Walmart if they need it, or Kmart or Kroger or wherever they might go. Not Kmart anymore, unfortunately, but Kroger or wherever it may be for shopping purposes. But we're most excited when it gets them to educational opportunities and employment opportunities, because those are the areas that will forever change their life and give them opportunity, maybe one day, not to need public transit. Now, we have a system that hopefully it's not just filling the need of those who need it, but maybe it's also filling the need of those who just want it, who want a cheaper way to and from work, who want to be more environmentally conscious than driving their own vehicle and maybe using a system that allows them to be a little bit better of environmental stewards. And so thankfully, this transit system is working. It's not just working, it's exceeding all expectations. Now, Paul, I think in that first year you guys were hoping for 2,500 riders. Does that sound about right? And we had over 20,000. And so the number continues to grow each and every year. And I suspect we're not too far down the road from people demanding an additional route or two, or more hours, or weekend service, and so forth and so on. Of course, it all costs money, and certainly in our budget this year we have money set aside to help make this happen. But excitingly, we were also recognized as the 2016 Kentucky League of Cities Enterprise Cities Award winner for this very program. So people throughout the Commonwealth of Kentucky are recognizing the success of the Hopkinsville Christian County Transit System, and we certainly appreciate the continued leadership of that advisory committee and Nikki. Let's give them a round of applause if you don't mind this morning. What we have coming up next are shelters and more benches. Shelters in particular. We think about days like today. Wouldn't it be nice to wait for the bus and not stand in the rain? Well, soon enough, we're going to be creating more of those opportunities for people so that we're not just providing them a ride, we're helping them stay dry while waiting for that ride. Also in 2016, the Kentucky Recreation and Park Society named our Parks and Recreation program as an Outstanding Department of the Year for Class 2. And we also hosted the 2016 Kentucky Recreation and Park Society State Conference, where I believe we had about 200 professionals from throughout Kentucky that were here in November of 2016 to participate in that conference. So that's 200 people from across the state that came to Hopkinsville. They spent a few nights here. I think they went to some of our downtown locations and had a few good times, if I'm not mistaken, Tab, and they just really enjoyed their experience here. And they bragged and they bragged and they bragged about what they saw happening in Hopkinsville and Christian County, Kentucky. And Tab, we appreciate you and others working to help make that happen, to get those individuals here, because one of the ways we change the perception of our community is we showcase the great things that are happening in it. And this conference and this recognition for our Parks and Recreation team continues to help us do that. Not to be outdone, however, we are also designated as a Playful City USA by Kaboom. And that's a great designation. Only 9 cities in Kentucky have received that designation. And what that means is Kaboom has decided that we're the type of community that's committed to parks and recreation and playful activities for our young people and for our families. Now, some people hear the term playful and they think that sounds trivial, that it's not important. But the truth is, being a playful city means you're investing in the recreation components that attract millennials, that attract military families, that attract baby boomers and retirees to want to come be a part of what you have to offer. Because all of us enjoy to go out and recreate and have a good time at a low cost. So facilities like the Greenway and the skate park and the dog park and the farmer's market, and I could go down the list, these are the types of facilities that allow us to be a playful city USA. And so we're certainly excited about that. And we're also excited that in 2016 and 2017 we were recognized as a play ball city by Major League Baseball. Again, that's just showcasing the commitment that we have to organized baseball and softball in our community. Of course, we're organized to other sports too, but the U.S. Council of Mayors has this particular designation that we've been able to apply for and receive in the past couple years. And I notice again, John Bruce with the Hoptown Hoppers, that is no small reason why we've been able to be a play ball city, having the exceptional team of the Hoptown Hoppers playing each and every summer here for the past several years. And I think your average attendance is about 11,000 fans right now, John. Does that sound about right? Give or take? Somewhere in that ballpark. It certainly is a good number, and many of these fans are coming from outside of our community. They're not coming from just Trigg County and Montgomery County and Caldwell County. These are parents and grandparents and girlfriends and cousins and brothers and sisters, and they're coming from all over the United States of America, even as far away as Hawaii, when we've had players that are from Hawaii playing on the Hoppers baseball team, and we've had players from Hawaii play on the Hoppers baseball team. And so it's very exciting for us. A couple other highlights as I think about this, make sure I don't go too far, as we've added the 2nd Street Community Center. You guys might not be familiar with this new community center, but it was privately owned until we recently acquired it over off 2nd Street behind the old Booker T. Washington Elementary School and Middle School, what is now the Cedar Grove Community Center. We now own a property there. It is our most rented public facility that we have, the 2nd Street Community Center. We're very excited about that. We also opened the skate park in the past year. Any of you been by and seen the skate park on a nice day and seen how many people of all ages, young at heart, are utilizing that skate park? And I see Dave, I know you guys have been out there doing some work, Mike and your team, over the past few months. It really is an asset. Now, I didn't grow up a skater. It's just not something I grew up doing. I tried one time, failed miserably. I got a lot of what they call, I think it's road rash as a result of it, Councilmember Henson. And so I learned my lesson after one experience. But it is an asset to this community. And the number of people it's bringing in from all throughout the region is truly impressive. And we've got coming up very soon our first tournament-style competition that will be happening. Tab, what's the date of that? May 27th. So if you have a chance, get out there and check that out. It's a great spectator sport. It's a great spectator sport. We are talking world-class athletes to perform the kind of tricks they do with a skateboard. I don't have to understand it, but I certainly can appreciate what it does and the opportunities it creates. Again, not just for young people, a lot of young at heart. I actually heard Representative Thomas threatening to go out there and perform some tricks every once in a while. I think Sandra said that you can't do that, by the way. We also, of course, opened up our dog park in the past year, another well-utilized park, and we've got people of all ages using it. Canines of all variety are using it, and it's been just a great experience for us. Of course, our Tiebreaker campus continues to be one of the crown jewels of our parks and recreation programming, and we have a wonderful softball, baseball complex there that we're continuing to look at ways we can invest in it, and it stays full. We've got tournaments booked pretty much every weekend, if the rain will work with us over the dry months. And then our Family Aquatic Center, what we always refer to as the water park, continues to draw thousands upon thousands of people in through those gates. In fact, the average is 47,000 attendees each and every year come to the water park. 47,000. Our best year has been about 55,000. Last year we were on a record-setting pace, and then it got wet from mid-July to mid-August, and so we slowed down and we got to about 47,000, our average. And so hopefully this year will be dry for us and we'll see a record year. I can tell you that we're planning some exciting things at the water park this summer, including teen nights on 3 different nights, where we're going to open the water park up on 3 Fridays. We've got the dates set, but I don't have them in front of me, but 3 different Friday nights where we'll allow teenagers only after the closing hours of the water park just to come hang out and have a good experience. Now, there's a reason we're doing that, 2 reasons really. One is we want to provide safe places for teenagers that are affordable. We've got a great movie theater. The bowling alley's worked on itself, so those private investments continue to do their best. We've offered some teen-friendly zones at DeBow Park, and we're looking at some other areas. But we thought opening the water park would be another opportunity to do that. But the other reason is we really want to get teenagers inside the park. They don't want to go during the daytime hours when it's overwhelmingly 4 to 8-year-olds. For some reason, 15 to 18-year-olds don't always want to hang out with their younger siblings. And so we want to give them a chance to really experience the park and hopefully get excited about coming back to it, and maybe even demanding that we look for more and more ways to expand the hours of operation and to be teen-friendly. And what I really mean by that, being teen-friendly, means probably bigger slides and more activity. There's just no other way around it. We're not proposing anything this year around the water park in terms of new amenities, but to my city council members, the time is coming where we're going to have to if we want to continue to see that water park be a successful endeavor. And I would suggest to you 47,000 attendees, 60% from a neighboring county, 60% from a neighboring county. It is a successful endeavor. I know the politics of it. We're not supposed to touch it. It's not supposed to be popular. Well, I'm just looking at the data. And the data tells me 47,000 attendees and over $2 million impact, 60% coming from a neighboring county. Whether that's politically popular or not, it's good for our economy. And that's my job, is to be honest about what's good for the economy. And this certainly is one of those things that's good for the economy. Any questions so far? That's really just my way of stalling until I turn my paper. Are you sure? No questions? Nothing at all? All right, we'll move to the next slide then. Some of the other things that we've been doing, as you're probably aware of, is we're getting ready for the total solar eclipse, but more importantly, as we're just trying to make ourselves the most beautiful city that we can make ourselves, we've liked to use the eclipse as an excuse, but I like to suggest that beyond August 21st, we have to be committed to these same types of initiatives and activities, because we don't only want to look good for the visitors that are going to come, the tens of thousands of visitors that are coming for the eclipse, we want to look good for ourselves and for people that come beyond August the 21st. So you may have seen some of the wildflower plantings that have been done, the downtown planters, which are currently up, and here in a month or so will look kind of like that bottom right corner picture when they start growing and you see them overflowing. You don't see them as much yet because they've got to grow a little bit more, but I know Ann Casey and her team and others are really working hard on those types of initiatives and doing a great job. And you see the banners on the boulevard. In fact, in the top right corner, that is the current banner that you will see along the boulevard. These are different types of efforts that we've made to beautify the city. Again, continuing momentum from many years before, and certainly trying to increase our presence and our effort in these types of initiatives. And yes, for the eclipse, but more importantly, for beyond the eclipse. And by the way, when we think about the eclipse, so far we have 27 different states that have people from 27 different states that have booked reservations at either our campsite or our public viewing site, and 11 different countries. So this eclipse is really putting Hopkinsville, Christian County, and this entire region on the map in a way that we could never pay for. We're just lucky. We're just lucky to be the point of greatest eclipse on August 21st, 2017. Some other efforts you may have seen around the community include the airport tree planting. If you look at the top right corner, there's been some trees planted out that way. We're also partnering on the airport and their board to offer a new sign as you leave the airport. The airport is often a front door for people that fly into the community, especially industrial recruits that fly into the community. So we're trying to help the airport board do more and more to beautify that campus. Of course, we've got the white picket fencing that you may see around the key intersections of Eagle Way Bypass and the main arteries in. And that's been a lot of hard work and funding that we put in place over the past couple of years in our capital budget. And so you'll see evidence of those white picket fences. We've got more to come in those areas. And then another exciting development through a partnership with the Convention Visitors Bureau, who has taken out the bond and is paying for this, is the Visitor Center at the Trail of Tears Park. And I know, Cheryl, you're anxious to see that get open. And I do believe it planned to be open before August 21st, right? We're keeping our fingers crossed, I know. I know that Robinson Construction, who's overseeing the construction process, is working hard to make that happen. And we're very, very hopeful that, in fact, that is going to happen. And if you haven't been out to the Trail of Tears Park lately, I would encourage you to get out there, not only with the Visitor Center, but the signage and the entryway enhancements that have been done. Just a lot of great things happening out that park. A continued testament to the city and county's commitment to the Trail of Tears Park, and certainly to the sacrifice that the Cherokee Nation made. And the reason that park exists is to remember and commemorate that sacrifice. But let me be clear. The more we can do to invest in that campus, in that park, that will bring more and more people to it, the more likely they are to actually understand the sacrifice. We've got to bring people into that campus, and so when we create a visitor center at its gateway, when we plan activity in it, when we invest in it, we give people more reasons to come be a part of it and then to learn about that great sacrifice, which is what we really want out of the Trail of Tears Park. It's not just about the powwow, which is critical, a wonderful festival and activity in and of itself. It's about year-round usage and showcasing and helping people to understand that tremendous sacrifice the Cherokee Nation made back so many years ago. Of course, we've got the Hopkinsville Christian County Wins initiatives that will be unfolding in the coming months, and certainly we'd be remiss if we didn't acknowledge those. I know it's been well covered in the media, so I won't spend a lot of time on these other than to give you a few quick updates on timeline. The indoor sportsplex, a design firm, has been chosen, and that design process will be unfolding here over the next few months. We would hope to break ground in the late summer, early fall, and of course that's something that we're very excited about, and we believe will add to our sports tourism community and bring people in from throughout the region, as well as providing more opportunity for our own residents to participate in indoor sporting activities like indoor soccer, volleyball, basketball, archery, cheer cats, and things of that nature. Of course, we've got the parks improvements. We're extending the Greenway out to the Tiebreaker campus. That will double the size of our Greenway, connecting downtown to the south side of the community. What a great sense of connectivity that will create. Will also allow for some safer routes to schools for kids who live in the downtown area but go to school at Hopkinsville High School or Hopkinsville Middle School. And with one project that we're working with the state of Kentucky along North Drive, assuming that this project does move forward in the governor's plan, we will actually add sidewalks down North Drive from where they end currently near the community college all the way into the Greenway system. And with that project and the Greenway expansion, we will have connected Tiebreaker Family Aquatic Center and Tiebreaker Park to Freedom Elementary School and everything in between. Think about that. Think about the impact that makes for this community. So the Greenway extension, we're really excited about this. 2nd Street and Joe Mumford Park, 2 neighborhood parks that we're looking to get off the ground here very, very soonly. In fact, the 2nd Street Park is just about to final design, and the Joe Mumford Park is about to begin the design phase, and as is the Greenway extension. And so we're really excited about getting those designs moving forward and getting ground broken on each of those new amenities for our community. Again, we'll add a tremendous amount of additional opportunity for our own residents as well as for future residents and visitors to come enjoy aspects of Hopkinsville that they might not otherwise be able to enjoy today. And then finally, a part of the city projects, we've got the sidewalk improvement plan, and that in fact is starting to move this summer, and we'll start with our new sidewalk construction this summer, and we're doing that through a third-party contract. and we're prioritizing which sidewalks to hit first as we speak. I'm looking over at Mike Perry because his team is the one really leading that charge, along with the private contractor. But a couple of the ones we think will go first will be sidewalks that interact with school infrastructure, because during the summer months when schools aren't in session, that's the best time for us to get out there and hit those sidewalks. So Glass Avenue, the west side of Glass Avenue, will be one of the first new sidewalks constructed as part of the sidewalk plan. If you've driven that area during the morning and late afternoon, you will acknowledge that we desperately need sidewalks in that area. There's many, many young people, whether they're going, mothers taking their kids to Audubon Head Start, or kids walking to Christian County Middle School or Christian County High School, or Freedom Elementary School, or Hopkinsville Community College. There's a lot of interaction there between pedestrians and roadways, and it's not always safe. So we're really excited about that sidewalk project. And then a sidewalk on Millbrook Drive and Powell Lane, I'm helping to create a safer path into the Millbrook School area, which is a bustling school if you travel there in the mornings and afternoons. I think it's our biggest elementary school now. If not, I think it is. I see Nikki shaking her head, yes. And so it's one of our bigger, if it's not the biggest. And so those two projects will likely move first, but all of the new sidewalks that are approved in the plan will be unfolding as quickly as we can get them done. And then we have several rehabilitation projects that we need to do for sidewalks that may have been built 30, 40, 50 years ago that haven't been touched since in terms of improvements. In total, over 50 sidewalk projects will be done as a result of Hopkinsville Christian County wins. Again, all of this you should be seeing action on it this summer into the fall, and with indoor sportsplex and the Greenway, our hope is that those two facilities are open to the public by the late summer 2018, fall of 2018. So about a year and a half out. Can't come soon enough for me, and I'm sure for many of you. And we're certainly committed to moving them as quickly as we can. I should also acknowledge to the public and to the media that we will be reporting on these projects at the Committee of the Whole meetings, giving an accounting for the money and for the timeline periodically. We think about every other month, but really as there are major items to acknowledge, we will acknowledge those. We'll also be updating our website for Hopkinsville Christian County Wins so we can show you by project the timeline and the money spent per project. You might recall that when City Council approved the funding for this, they did so by project, by line item. And so we have an obligation to them and to you to ensure that we are transparent in the way we communicate the dollars that are being spent, and to ensure that we don't overspend any particular project. In fact, the only way we could overspend a project would be to come back to the council for approval to do so. And we don't want to have to do that, Councilmember Grimes. We want to underspend on these projects if we can. Now, that being said, we do want to deliver the best facilities possible. And so we would, obviously, if we thought we were coming into a place where we were going to overspend, we would engage with the council and we would have that discussion, but that's not our goal. Our goal is to stay within the budget, and more importantly, is to report that to the public and to the council transparently and forthrightly each and every time that we can. So we'll report on these projects independently of one another and make sure that you guys are aware of what's happening with them. County projects that are under Hopkinsville Christian County Wins includes the Ag Expo Center, the Convention Center, the Alhambra Theater, and the Pennyroyal Area Museum. Again, this is a unique partnership between the city and the county that we're honored to be a part of. And those four projects in and of themselves are going to bring more and more people into our community and continue to invest not only in areas like the Convention Center campus, but also in downtown Hopkinsville. We think that's absolutely critical. I should acknowledge that the county approved a transient room tax that allowed their part of the funding to take place. And the Ag Expo facility is not a done deal. It is in the process of a feasibility study. And so should the feasibility study come back and suggest it's a good idea, I suspect fiscal court will want to move forward on it, but that's their decision to make. We're here to support it if it does move forward. If for some reason the feasibility study comes back and says it's not a good idea, then I suspect they'll back up and they'll look at other opportunities. But we are here to partner with them one way or the other on each of those four projects, and we're particularly excited about the Ag Expo facility because of its potential to bring people in, but we're equally excited about the Alhambra Theater and the Pennyroyal Area Museum projects because they're downtown. I mean, we can look out and see our neighbors here, and we want to help make sure we've got those kind of great facilities bringing more and more people into our community. Okay, so now onto the budget part of it, and I'm going to move this as quickly as I can, but I want to make sure I give you good information here. So each year we look at our general fund cash reserve, and we want to make sure that our general fund cash reserve stays at or above 20% of an annual year's operating budget. So for instance, our fiscal year 17-18 operating budget, general fund budget, is about $34 million, just over $34 million. So 20% of $34 million would be $6.8 million. And so when we look at the threshold of how much money do we need to have in the bank in reserve, We need to be above $6.8 million. Well, as you can see, as of right now, April 21st, 2017 at least, we are above that 20% threshold at about $7.1 million. Now, we were higher than that, but through Hopkinsville Christian County Wins, we have authorized $1 million from reserve to be spent on those projects because we felt we could afford to do so given the fact that we were significantly above the 20% threshold. Now, there are some cities that have higher amounts, 25%, 30%. But general accounting principles, Robert, if I'm not mistaken, had 20% as a good number to have. Obviously, if we were at 25%, that wouldn't be terrible. But we feel comfortable at 20%. Robert feels comfortable today because he has shorts on, but he feels comfortable financially when we're above 20%. By the way, Robert Martin shouldn't be here today. He's recovering from knee replacement surgery, so I'm giving him a hard time about having shorts on, but it's really because he's recovering from knee replacement surgery. Give Robert and Tim and Idalia and everybody from the finance department a round of applause for their hard work. I get to stand up here and present it. They're the ones that really worked hard to put this budget together, along with Nate Pagan and several others. Internally, our department heads, of course, were critical to it. And it's not my budget. This is a professional budget developed by professional employees of the City of Hopkinsville. I gave some parameters that I'll talk about here in just a second. It's really their budget. I'm just giving you the information, and I'm accountable for it along with the City Council, who will ultimately approve it once I'm sure there's some good discussion and potentially some changes to be made. But it's really a professional budget made by incredible employees for the City of Hopkinsville who worked diligently to make the math work. But 20% is a threshold we try to make sure we stay above, and we are comfortably above that at this point. We also take a look at our payroll comparison because we want to know how our payroll numbers are doing, because payroll receipts represent 48% of our revenue. Half of our revenue come from our payroll receipts. So if you ever hear an employee that works in the City of Hopkinsville say, "Why do I pay a payroll tax?" Half of the City of Hopkinsville's receipts come from that payroll tax. So if we want a good police department, if we want a good fire department, if we want good streets, if we want good parks, if we want to be able to develop and offer incentives for new growth, if we want to be able to support agencies like many that are represented here, half of our revenue comes from payroll receipts. So that's why we have the payroll tax, to ensure that we have a growing community capable of delivering the services that so many people demand. So many people demand. Now, you'll see that's not the trend that we would like to see. We'd rather see payroll receipts growing year over year, but the fact is, from FY11 to FY14, we were artificially high with payroll numbers. What I mean by that is, as we came out of the Great Recession, the recovery was lifting payroll numbers as jobs were being added back very, very quickly, and income levels were starting to improve. And so that was a good thing. It meant in FY11, 12, 13, and 14, we had a very strong payroll number, and that led to some surpluses over the past few years that you heard us talk about. Well, in FY15, we dropped down to just under 3%. Currently, year to date, we're at about 2.25% for this fiscal year. 2.25%. That's not a bad number. We put this year's budget based on 2%, so we're still better than what we budgeted, but it's just not what it once was. I would love to see it jump back up to 5%, 6%, 8%. That's probably going to happen now as a result of actual economic growth by recruiting new industry and new jobs, less as a natural part of the recovery process like we saw in the early part of this decade. But 2.25% is where we are currently. Yet not a bad number. It's growth, but we'd certainly like to see more growth on our payroll numbers. In fact, yesterday Sam called and asked me about, kind of, if you went back 10 years ago, the budget was this number, and now it's about $10 million than it was 10 years ago. What was the result of that? It's largely being driven by payroll growth. Because if you look at tax rates over the last 10 years, other than the 1% insurance premium tax that Council approved back in February, that we proposed and Council approved back in February, we hadn't had a tax rate increase in about a decade. So the growth over the last decade wasn't happening because of rate increases. It was happening because of economic growth and this kind of payroll growth. So as we look at the coming fiscal year, some noteworthy items that I want to share with you is, one is we're budgeting for 2% payroll growth. I just said we're about 2.25%. We budgeted for 2% this year. We're budgeting for 2% again next year. It would be easy for us as we budget to try to be more aggressive with our payroll number. Now, Robert would have had a heart attack, not a knee replacement surgery, and I don't need anybody having any more heart attacks around me. So if we try to get too aggressive, okay, but it would have been easy for us had we said, well, let's project 3% payroll growth. That'd given us more money that we could budget out, but it may have meant that we finish in the red. And you'll notice that I'm wearing a black tie today because we like to finish in the black when it comes to the budget. We don't want to finish in the red. We want to finish in the black. When we finish in the black, it means we have a surplus. And when we have a surplus, it means we're able to do some things year-end, like honor our commitment to the HCC pledge, which we still owe $125,000 on that pledge, things that will help our community grow. When we finish in the red, it means we're chewing into our reserves. And we're above 20%, but we're not way above 20%. So we don't need to chew into our reserves. So 2% is about as aggressive as we feel comfortable recommending in this year's payroll growth number. In fact, it probably is a little less conservative than we would like to be. But when we look back at that 5-year trend, that 6-year trend, we've not dropped below 2% since the last 6 years. So we feel like 2% is a safe number. We're also proposing not to use any prior year revenue. So we're not going to use any money from cash reserves to balance this budget that's being presented. So we're going to use only the money that we can project being created this coming fiscal year to pay for the expenses that are coming this fiscal year as it's approaching. We're also, another noteworthy item is we're implementing the second year of a 3-year pay plan. For those that may be familiar with it, about a year and a half ago, our HR director, Kenny Grabera, came to the City Council and presented a pay plan. And that was based on some analysis of how our pay rates across our different levels of service, across our departments, compare to similar cities across the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And what we found was we do pretty well at entry level. Sam, just a second. We do pretty well at entry level, but when we get to the mid-level experience, 10, 12, 14 years, we don't compare as favorably to some of our peer cities, and that's where we have some retention issues. And so the second year of this pay plan is meant to help us continue to make progress in getting closer to our peer cities and ensuring that we have a very competitive pay rate. And but the average increase on that is about 3% across the board, but it'll range from 2% to 5% based on your years of experience. Sam. 3.12% is the average for this coming fiscal year. So the range is 2% to 5%, but your average is 3.12%. Good question, but that's for this coming fiscal year. Last year, Kenny, I think we were like 2% to 4.5%, or 1.5% to 4.5%. But this is the second of a 3-year plan. Again, it was recommended forward through the City Council process, and so we're simply trying to honor what we believe the City Council wants us to be doing to take care of our employees. And I hope you understand. If you're a City of Hopkinsville employee, I know you agree with this, but if you're not a City of Hopkinsville employee, I hope you understand we've got great employees who are committed to making a positive difference each and every single day in this community. And they do so not only through their work for the city, but you can look across the different nonprofit boards and organizations and you will find City of Hopkinsville employees volunteering their time because they care about this community. And we want to take care of them and their families because we want to keep a good team. Right? When you have a good team, you want to keep a good team. And so this second year of that pay plan helps us do that, but it's not small money. That's $540,000 of a commitment we're making out of our budget to take care of our employees. We also are taking care of our overtime for the eclipse. We're going to have tens of thousands of people here, and we are. We have to be ready with our first responders and others for that type of activity. And so the eclipse preparation and activity during the month of August is going to cost us $90,000, just under $90,000 in overtime. But we could choose not to fund that. Then we wouldn't have enough police officers and firefighters and EMTs and public works employees ready to deal with potentially 25, 30, 50,000 people. Some people say 100,000 people coming into our community. So we don't believe we have a choice. If we're going to be ready, we're going to fund the overtime. So you take those two items together and you say pretty significant allocation for personnel time to take care of our employees and to make sure we're ready for the eclipse. We also are beginning the accrual for the 27th pay period. Last year, you might recall, I spoke about having a 27th pay period every 11 years or so. It's an accounting reality that when you're on a 26 pay period plan, every 11th year or so, there's an actual 27th pay period. Last year, that came due this fiscal year, and it cost the city, Nate, was it about $600,000? About $600,000 we had to absorb in the current year budget to honor that 27th pay period. Well, we didn't feel like delivering the next council 11 years down the road or the next mayor 11 years down the road that same type of news. Like, I can tell you my response when they came and told me that last year. I swallowed my throat, said, how are we going to come up with $600,000? But thankfully, we've got a great team of professionals, and we were able to do so. So now we're going to accrue each and every year for the next 10 years That $69,000, it'll be a number that has some fluctuation in it based on future payroll projection. So that way, 11 years from now, the mayor and council at that time aren't stuck figuring out how to pay for that. And perhaps all the city council members will be the same city council members, will not be the same mayor because we have a 3-term limit. I could not be the same mayor 11 years from now. But all these city council members will know they don't have to come up with $600,000 to $700,000. It'll be built in. That's good financial management, and that's our commitment. And that's $70,000 right there. We'll see an increase to the library appropriation of $32,533. You're going to see me talk about that in just a second. We are adding a position to market the Sportsplex. I love the movie Field of Dreams, Margaret. I've mentioned that a couple times this week. It showed at the Alhambra on Sunday, and many of you remember the famous line, "If you build it, they will come." It's actually he will come, but everybody says they will come. If you build it, they will come. That's not how we feel about the Sportsplex. If we build it, we need to ensure they will come by marketing it and making sure we're ready to fill it up and recruit tournaments and get people into our community to spend their disposable income to benefit our restaurants, our businesses, and our hotels, and all of our areas throughout the community. So we are funding that position in this year's budget. It was recommended in a pro forma. It should come as no surprise to the council. We are only recommending it at 6 months because we don't feel we need it any earlier then. And then we're also recommending a service center position to help Greg Harper and his team over at the service department starting in January. The service department is who oversees the maintenance and the repairs of all of our fleets of vehicles. Greg, how many vehicles do we have? 227. I'm not surprised you knew it specifically to the number, by the way. Greg is an outstanding manager and supervisor for our team. And they've been asking for this position for a couple of years. We've been putting it off. This year we're going to try to make it happen starting in January. And that will allow us to continue to maintain our vehicles and hopefully eliminate the need for new vehicles because we're maintaining them more and more and even better. And then we're also proposing to invest in the Hometown Heroes program, $7,500. This started about 2 years ago in a partnership with the Pennyroyal Veterans Center. And this helps us to get homeless veterans some transitional employment, beautifying the city of Hopkinsville. It started with a $5,000 contribution from Atmos Energy. They've added a little bit more private money to the equation over the past couple of years. We've added some money to it. We've had other private contributions. But to keep that program alive, we want to make sure to put $7,500 in there as seed money. And we hope that we continue to get private money. But I will tell you this, the veterans love the program. These are veterans who are at the homeless shelter for a reason, and we're trying to help them get back on their feet and find long-term employment. And we've been given information recently that several of the veterans who have participated in the Hometown Heroes program, the Hoptown Heroes program, have in fact gained full-time employment. That's what we want. We're also doing some other efforts to reach out and support the persistently unemployed and underemployed through a program called Fresh Start. Linda is involved with that through the Inner City Res program, and we're excited to see that program get off the ground this coming fiscal year. I believe the next class is actually the first class is going to start here very soon. We have 7 people in that class. This is for persistently unemployed and underemployed, mostly from our inner city. And so we see Linda and Jennifer back there. I don't know if I see Laura back there, but I see Jennifer and Linda. We appreciate y'all's hard work on the Fresh Start program. We're really excited about what that's going to do. We're also reaching out to the various agencies that support the overall homeless population in our community. I'm looking at Nancy Jean. I know you guys interact with the homeless population at the library because we're trying to make sure that good training is provided, that the resources are connected, and that we're doing everything we can to care for those who are in the most dire circumstances in our community. So the Hoptown Heroes is one sliver of that, the Fresh Start program, and there are probably some other programs that will unfold down the road that we haven't even named yet or dreamed of yet because we do want to make sure we're tackling those challenges. I should also acknowledge, I didn't include this on the slide, or I should say Nikki, who put this together. I didn't ask her to include this on the slide. She did a great job putting the presentation together. The Inner City Res, we're proposing to fund at $500,000 again this year. We think that's important because we've got more work to be done in our inner city. And then another one, this may sound small, but I'm really excited about it. We're proposing to fund a $40,000 year-round asphalt recycler, Dave Herndon. And this is a piece of equipment that will allow us to recycle asphalt and do pothole filling and some patchwork on our streets year-round. Right now, we can only do it when the asphalt factories are open and we're able to get the asphalt. This $40,000 piece of equipment will allow us to do it year-round. And I don't know about you, but I don't like potholes. And I hear people from the public don't like them either. And so this will help us be more responsive to those potholes. I do want to highlight the library. And I'm not pulling this agency out to do anything other than I realize it's been talked about in the media time and again, and I wanted to make sure that people understood what the City of Hopkinsville is trying to do to support our library, which, by the way, is led by an outstanding director and a great board and wonderful volunteers who are doing everything they can to help this library be successful. And I know that the word library means different things in today's reality than it did maybe 50 years ago, but I also know that if you go to the library, you're going to see people using it each and every day. Especially if you go into that computer lab area, you're going to see people using it to get back on their feet, to search for jobs, to write resumes, to better their lives. And that's what we want a library for. But I have to acknowledge that our request from the library was for a 71% increase. And we would have loved to have the money to be able to make that 71% increase. But the fact of the matter is, when we received our agency and department requests this year for funding, there was $1 million more in request than we could project in funding. $1 million more in request than we could project in funding. And so none of us are magicians on the city council or in the mayor's office. When we don't have the money, we don't have the money. And so the best we could do is try to figure out, okay, what are we going to prioritize and how are we going to spend those dollars the wisest as we can to have the biggest impact that we can without hurting other agencies and other departments. So we could have funded an agency at a 71% increase, but we would have cut other agencies to do so. Or we would have cut departments to do so. Or we would have done it at the expense of our own employees. And so what we chose to do instead was continue our commitment to the public library, as you can see, by recommending a 10% increase, which is about $34,000 more this fiscal year coming over the last fiscal year. If you go back to fiscal year 2013-2014, the City of Hopkinsville funded the public library at $232,000. With what we've proposed, if it is approved at that number, we will bring it up to $357,863. And so that is a $125,000 increase over the last 5 fiscal years. I hope you'll agree that's a commitment the city is making to our public library because we value our public library. I know there's more need than what we've been able to fund. And so we'll continue to stand as a good partner and do everything we can every year to help support the cause. But we think this is a good faith effort in getting us in the right direction. And I also acknowledge, since being mayor, fiscal year 15-16, because those are the 3 budgets that I've been responsible for, presenting at least, we're looking at about a $46,000 increase over that time frame. We will continue to be a good partner and do everything we can to help the library be successful. And I see many of the folks there. Thank you guys for your hard work. And Bonnie, the Imagination Library is awesome. Keep rocking with what you're doing. There's no doubt it's making a positive impact. Okay, we're winding this down. I know you guys are ready to go. Our projected revenue for fiscal year 17-18 is $34,698,270. You can see on the pie chart the various sources of revenue. I won't cover every single one of those. What I will acknowledge is the payroll tax is 48% of the revenue. The business license tax is 5%. The property tax represents 4%. And the insurance premium tax represents 3%. We are recommending no tax increases in the new fiscal year budget. Now, the WINS premium tax, the insurance premium tax, was approved in February, and it takes effect July 1. And so I want to be transparent about that. So some could say, well, that's a new tax. It was a new tax approved in February. As part of this budget presentation and this proposed budget, no new tax increases, not on the property tax, not on the payroll tax, not on the business license tax. And that was something that was very important to us because we recognize, in having just approved a tax increase, that the taxpayers of this community need to make sure that we're good fiscal stewards, and we can't always pass along to them the additional revenue needs that we have. And then you can see the miscellaneous items that we get there through the Municipal Road Aid Fund, 2% of our budget. That comes from the state. It's forecast about $632,000 this year. That pays for our street paving and our snow removal and our salt supply and all those kind of good things. And you can see the other items there. Again, I won't take us through every single one of them because you have the packet and you have the information. We have a balanced budget on our expenses of $34,698,720. So again, that's balanced, using no prior year's revenue, using no additional tax increases, and we thought that was very important. I do want to note of the MRA funds, which represent 2% of our expenses, that's $632,000. We are setting aside $427,000 of that $632,000 for street paving. Now, we want more, but the fact is the MRA fund continues to decline from the state government because of the way that it's funded at the state level. There are just some issues with the gas tax funding mechanism. And the primary issue is, as cars have continued to be more energy efficient, they're using less fuel, which results in less purchasing at the pump, which results in less gas tax. And so it's an interesting inverted relationship that the more people drive, the less, and the more fuel efficient the vehicle, the less funding is available to pave our streets. And so as we look to the future, we are doing everything we can internally to think about how to find more money for street paving, because we are not satisfied with $427,000. In fact, I would suggest we need to find a way to double that number over time in the next few years. And I don't have a way of doing it yet, but we're thinking about how do we find the revenue to help make that happen without tax increases so we can ensure better streets in Hopkinsville. The good news with the WINS program is that $1.5 million through the insurance premium tax will pay for our sidewalks for the next few years. So we're really excited about that, and that's allowed us to do a little bit more in street paving. But again, on the expenses, the other thing I want to highlight, you can look at our payroll, our retirement, and our fringe represents about 58%, if I'm seeing that correctly, 58% of the overall budget. So when you think about our operational budget, it's largely driven by our personnel. We have 260 personnel that work for the City of Hopkinsville. About 230 of those work for police, fire, or public works. So if anybody says to you, city's got too many employees, they need to trim the fat, they need to cut some numbers, well, the only place we can really go to cut would be police, fire, and public works. And those are the first responders. Those are the people we need the most to make sure we are able to respond to fire, to respond to emergency, to respond to crime, and to have the streets and sidewalks and parks and grounds and maintenance that we so deserve and need in this community. In fact, when you look at it, 62% of the city's budget is in police, fire, and public works. So just about 2/3 of the city's budget is police, fire, and public works. The city leadership in Hopkinsville for decades has worked hard to have a tight budget and to be streamlined. We are not flush with cash. We're not overflowing with employees. In fact, we have some departments that are smaller today than they were 10 years ago. That's just a fact. Where we have prioritized in our personnel side is police and fire and public works, and rightfully so. Those are the fundamentals of city government to make sure we meet the needs of this community. Our capital fund cash reserves, we've got about $250,000 we're projecting in that account this year. As you can see, that fluctuates, but it's somewhere in that $250,000 to $500,000 range each and every year over the past several years. These are the requests that we got in for our capital budget. As you can see, we had $2,057,659 in requests. That was almost $400,000 more than we project in revenue from the capital budget. As a reminder, the capital budget is funded by our insurance premium tax. If you come to this next slide with me, we are projecting to transfer from our general fund $1.36 million. That is the standard 7.5% insurance premium tax that we've collected, with 1/3 of that going to the capital budget, $1.36 million. This coming year, we have this one-time situation where, due to the 1% insurance premium tax increase, we have excess funds for our capital budget of $301,904. That is a one-year situation, and the reason that is happening is because as we bring in the money from that 1% increase on the insurance premium tax, we've not yet materialized all of the expenses for these projects. In fact, right now we're just in design phase. So until those projects are built and we have the fully obligated debt, we don't have the payments that we anticipate having until we have all of that debt. And we won't have that probably until the end of this coming fiscal year or early in the next fiscal year. So as a result of that, we got a little bit of a surplus from that 1% insurance premium tax increase of $301,904. That was really good news for us. Had we not had that, we would have been about $700,000 less revenue than capital budget requests. So clearly we couldn't say yes to every capital budget request we had when we were $400,000 short, but this one-time WINS transfer of $301,000 gave us the ability to say yes a little bit more than we would have otherwise. And so what we are proposing is for our Public Safety Municipal Center bond. That's an obligation that we have. We don't have any choice. We're going to pay it. It's a $546,763 payment. That's for this building and for the new police department that used to be the City Hall, the Lackey Municipal Building, which is now the Lackey Police Department. That's a payment that we're going to have for the next several years. So when you think about our capital budget, $550,000 is obligated every year off the top for that bond payment. We're also proposing $466,328 for the fire department. That really is two things. That's the payment that we are making on a fire truck that we bought 2 years ago. We have that payment for the next couple of years. And it's also converting the old police department into a training center for the fire department. That's about $330,000 total. And so we're really excited to be able to do that for the fire department. We think that's necessary. It'll help them co-locate their training facility with the main station. It'll make it easier and more effective for training, and we think that's critical. We're also proposing $394,000 for the police department. That's to purchase 8 new vehicles as part of the police department vehicle replacement program, and a new piece of technology called the Pharaoh. Chief, I'm drawing a blank on the exact name of it, but the Pharaoh, and then here it is, I got it right in front of me, the Pharaoh 3D laser scanner, which will help them on crime scenes do a better job of gathering the scene through a 3D imaging process where they won't have to sit there and draw the scene out. They'll be able to gather it. It'll be precise. It'll be to the millimeter precise, and it'll live on beyond that. And so they'll have the ability to go back time and again and review that crime scene and make them more effective at solving crimes and dealing with accidents that involve vehicles as well. And so they're really excited about that piece of equipment. We're also proposing $119,000 for our public works, for maintenance division vehicles and equipment. Just under $60,000 for community development service for 2 new vehicles for the CDS. And that's something they've been requesting for the past couple of years. And we're a good partner with their community development services. And so $60,000 for their vehicles. Our IT department requested $35,000 for the firehouse replacement software. Let me clarify. We're not replacing a fire station. That's the name of the software, Firehouse. And so it's a firehouse replacement software that they utilize to help us track our ambulance and our fire runs and our ECC runs. And so a very important piece to us. And then $30,000 for a Parks and Recreation 3/4-ton truck for a total of $1.65 million, leaving a small surplus in the capital budget of $12,162. We don't know if that surplus will materialize because some of these may cost us a little bit more here and there. And so we're budgeting a little bit of cushion just in case it costs us a little bit more to purchase the police cars or for the fire department training center or any of the other items that may be in there. But that's what we're proposing in the capital budget. And again, as you'll see, it's largely driven by police, fire, and public works, the bedrocks of our community, the bedrocks of our government. Now, I also would acknowledge that when you add in the public safety municipal center bond, the truck payment to the fire department, and the police car replacements, these are obligations we don't feel we have a choice. We're going to replace police cars if we want to be able to chase down the bad guys. We're going to make our debt payments. When you add those together, about 70% of each year's capital budget is already obligated through that bond payment and through police car replacement and the fire truck payment. So when we think about the capital budget, we only have about 30% of it for discretionary purposes to meet every other department's needs as well as the priorities of the community. So it's not a lot left over to spread out across the city. So we do the very best that we can. That's what we have. Any questions, any thoughts, any comments, I'll be happy to take them. If the media wants to stick around for a minute or two afterwards and don't want to ask them now, that's fine with me too. But anyone in the audience that might have a question, certainly feel free to ask. I know there are many agencies that are represented here. We appreciate the continued partnership with you. We tried to say yes as much as we possibly could. We had to say no some. For those that know me, you know I don't like to say no, but you do what you have to do when you're trying to make the math work with a budget. And so hopefully you'll respect that, and certainly we want you to know that we appreciate each and every one of you and the hard work you're doing on behalf of our community. Any questions? Okay. Then we stand adjourned. Thank you, guys.